Well, hello, Uncivil Law fans. I hope you're well, and I'm here with my good friend from New York, Nate, the lawyer. He's here to educate me and you. What is
Educate
this?
you.
What is this law thing? Is it good? Is it bad? How should I feel? I don't know. Okay. So we have several things that I'd like to talk about. There are two things from the Attorney General of the
Okay.
United States that are worthy of our discussion. So the first thing that's worthy of our discussion is apparently our Attorney General, William Barr, has suggested that various people who are affiliated with Antifa should be charged under sedition. He wants to bring up sedition charges. So he's apparently suggested to the U.S. attorneys or
Okay.
U.S. attorney, whatever, that they should look into sedition charges for the members of Antifa, which I don't know 100% how to feel about that. I don't know when the last time we brought a sedition charge was. I think it's been a little bit, but yeah.
You're now making me go to the Google machine because I don't know what the element for sedition is.
Yeah, well, we can both look it up together because, like, Lord, if I know off the top of my head what the elements of sedition is formally. I mean, I know the colloquial definition, but what is the actual statute? Sedition, U.S. Code. Does it have a definition somewhere? Treason, sedition, 18 U.S.C. 115. Great. Seditious conspiracy, advocating to overthrow the government. So I guess this is seditious conspiracy. If two or more people in any state or territory or in any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States conspire to overthrow, put down, or destroy by force the government of the United States, or levy war against them, or to oppose by force the authority thereof, or by force to prevent, hinder, delay the execution of any law of the United States, or by force seize, take, possess any property of the United States, contrary to law, they can be sentenced for 20 years. So it's a pretty broad law the way it's written. So I'm pretty sure some members of Antifa are guilty of various versions of that. You know, seize property, attempting to overthrow, put down, to destroy the government. When they set up the Chaz Chop and said we're an autonomous zone, presumably that qualifies. Oppose the authority thereof, presumably qualifies. Delaying the laws of the United States, attacking the courthouses, attempting to take possession thereof, all kinds of good stuff. So yeah, it might be a sedition, and apparently that's 20 years in the federal popo.
You got to. I think I don't know how you get the mens rea with that though, because you're going to have to. How do you get the mens rea? Because you have to have the criminal mental state to actually want to do that. And how do you prove that?
Well, you have to have a conspiracy, which means you have to have two or more people with an agreement and an overt act thereof. So yeah, if you just have the agreement and an overt act, so if you can show that two or more people had the agreement
to overthrow the government,
yes, to overthrow the government, and then took a positive step in furtherance thereof, then you're there. Because it's just conspiracy. You don't actually have to do any of those things. It's conspiracy to do those things. And that's 20 years unto itself. So I'm like, that's fine.
I don't know.
And then the rebellion or insurrection, whoever incites, sets foot, assists, or engages in any rebellion or insurrection against the authority of the United States, or gives aid or comfort thereto, shall be fined for not more than 10 years. And incapable of holding office in the United States, so they can't run for president. Very sad.
I don't know. It sounds like a lot of tough talk to me, bro. It just sounds like a lot of tough talk. It does
sound like a lot of tough talk, but I think there is some merit in going after the leaders as best as it can of Antifa. I think there's like the whole 80-20 rule. 80% of problems come from 20% of the population. It's the Matthew principle. The more you have, the more problems you get.
No, I know. I was going to ask you about Antifa. All right, because I know Antifa is supposed to stand for anti-fascism.
That's what they say. That's what it says on the label. What's actually in the bottle may not be what's on the label, but yeah.
So now, like, I'm for anti-fascism. I'm an anti-fascist, but now I'm not. But I don't know Antifa. I know they had the punch a Nazi thing and all that stuff, which I'm totally against. Violence for speech is not the way to go. But what are some of the other things that they've been doing? Because I know they're protesters, but are they the ones who are actually doing, like, I've heard a lot of bad things about them, but I've not seen anyone actually say, like, all right, this is what this group has done. It's like there's a protest and somebody does something bad, they say they're Antifa. But
Yeah.
who really knows? You know, they say that Black Lives Matter. They were saying that's about
Well,
the civil rights movement, you know?
at least we have one guy we know for sure. The guy who was shot and lived by Kyle Rittenhouse. He said he's 100% Antifa. So apparently he's Antifa, whatever that is, because he's like 100%. I'm like, got that settled. But yeah, the problem with Antifa as an organization is they seem to be a little bit amorphous, which is part of their structure. So the degree to which there is a singular Antifa to be in some sort of grand conspiracy is nebulous. Is this a lot of like, is this basically independent franchises that just open up and say, I'm an Antifa franchise because I say I am? And the degree to which, if that is, that these franchises can be held in mutual, agreement with each other because they're all under some sort of common banner by the name. It's like, what's in a name? How powerful is this trademark? I guess is an operative question here. But at least presumably you can get to whatever local cell, for lack of a better word, and all their members. So you got that going for you. But what they've done depends on who you ask. I mean, they've obviously been throwing bottles, throwing Molotov cocktails, burning cop cars, rioting, pillaging, depending on your views and stuff like that.
Yeah. See. I don't know. I don't know. I think Antifa seems to have the Black Lives Matter problem. And I call it the Black Lives Matter problem because it's the one where I think if you go like Black Lives Matter, they have a website and their website has a position papers and all that stuff, but that's not everybody. If you go out there and walk in a protest, you're part of Black Lives Matter. It's like that type of thing. And I think the same thing with Antifa. You go out there and you're walking the protest, you're part of Antifa. Usually when you talk about these type of organizations, there is some hierarchy, some structure, some guy, we always say, follow the money, the higher up you go. It always comes down to one man or one woman, because, I don't want to be said to be to not be sexist, but it seems like it's not the group itself, but the idea of the group that people are against. Does that make sense?
Oh, sure. Yeah, no doubt. And I think BLM as an organization is more codified because, as you point out, they do have a web page. So there is some entity claiming to be Black Lives Matter, which is attempting to speak for the universal movement. And the degree to which that's true, who knows? But the Antifa is mostly just on like 4chan, 8chan, and other kind of boards of that nature as best. So it's a little bit more amorphous. So it makes it a little bit harder. But yeah, the degree to which anyone who says I'm Antifa or I'm Black Lives Matter really understands what they're signing up for. Yeah, that's a whole problem. It's like you've accepted a label that you don't really understand the full implications of. I feel that's like a little bit on you. Maybe you should look a little bit more to what you're saying you support before you support it. But
I think when people like for me, I personally support Black Lives Matter, but I don't support all the stuff that they do. I do not support defund the police. I think that's ridiculous. Terry Crews, for instance. Did you see what he was arguing with Don Lemon? And he was like,
yes.
And he specifically said he was like, I support Black Lives Matter, but I don't support these pieces of Black Lives Matter. And then they were like, why don't you support them? Why don't you support them? And he was like, no.
Black Lives Matter means, Terry. What it means is specifically against the group. If you want to come up with an all Black Lives Matter group, that'd be different. It was so condescending. And I was like, wow.
But Terry Crews was making I think a correct point, is that if you're saying that we want to change the system to be better for everyone and that type of thing, and march for that common goal, I'm with that. I support that. I don't support defunding the police. I don't support, taking down monuments. I don't support certain aspects of it. I just don't support. Now, is there a way that you can, still support the movement, but not support everything about the movement? I think it's the same thing with the civil rights movement. You had some aspects of it where, get your guns. Black Panthers, for instance, that was part of the civil rights movement. And there was get your guns and, let's go to war versus, let's do, and Martin Luther King was peaceful protest. So even in that type of situation, you did have those factions within the group, even though it was more easily identifiable. But you did have those violent factions versus the peaceful factions. And I think the same thing with all these groups, Black Lives Matter, Antifa. I think you have these factions. But again, now I think we're in such a polarized environment. The people who get the most noise are the squeaky wheels, the ones who are out there burning down houses and stuff like that, even though they may be a minority of the group, but they are the ones who get the most press, Well, again, from the right wing media, the left wing media, everybody's a saint. So, it's all depends on who you watch.
Yeah, I'll read out the 2 super chats we got so far from Vindictus Prime. It's the 90-10 rule, the 80-20 rules for dating. I honestly had never heard the 90-10 rule. I've heard 80-20
I've heard 80-20
in a lot of different contexts, but I've never heard 90-10. But okay. Also, sedition tango has been done before under Adams and Wilson. Yeah, it wouldn't be like the first time ever, but it was. I literally said, when was the last time we've done this? If the last time we've done this has been Wilson, it's been a little bit now. From Aaron E, who said, do you think there is a legal basis to the DOE investigating Princeton for admitting racism is embedded in their universities or just trolling? Well, if Princeton actually admitted that racism is embedded in their university, then yes, the Department of Education has jurisdiction because federal funding goes to Princeton through student loans.
Yeah.
And federal, and you can't discriminate on the basis of race. So if Princeton actually said, yes, racism is embedded in our university, then yes, that would give the Department of Education jurisdiction to look into violations of the Civil Rights Act, which Princeton is subject to because they accept federal monies in the form of student loans, grants, and other aspects. So yes, I would think that would well qualify, no problem, without breaking a sweat. Yeah. So to your point, yeah, I think, the degree to which when you say you support anything, you're supporting the entire movement is always like interesting. Like, there are organizations which I believe more in and organizations which I believe less in, and I would say that I'm various members of it. The NRA, for example, has irritated me on many occasions. The ACLU, for example, I'm not a member of them currently, although I have been a member of the ACLU in the past. And every once in a while, the ACLU manages to do something to really irritate me, and mostly because I don't think that they're fighting for their own principles. So it's not like they, when they stood up for the marches and stuff like that, I'm all favor. But sometimes, especially lately, they seem to not be standing up for their own principles, and that's really annoying. $5 more from Vindictus Prime. I'll give more support when the name Black Lives Matter too, or Black Lives Also Matter. I need a comparator in my slogans and names of movements. Very well. That's fair, I suppose. Yeah.
I don't know. I think Black Lives Matter. It's interesting because I was having an argument with someone about this too. The what does the movement? Everyone has to now understand Black Lives Matter is the new civil rights movement, right? In 40 years, they're going to be talking about this as a civil rights movement. It's just the way the history. I think it's the way the history books will run. I think, and this is just honestly, I think right now we're living in an era where Trump is as radical right wing as you could possibly get. Let's just be honest, right?
I have to respectfully disagree with that. I don't find Trump to be particularly authoritarian, and I don't find him to be particularly to be appealing to that sense of the right wing. So I don't know exactly what you mean by right wing, but he's not. What I mean is by everything right wing that I would say a right wing president would do, somebody who is far right as you can possibly get. I think Trump has done, right? Judges as far right as you can get, as immigration, everything that Trump has done, the environment, right? It's as far right. It is not only it's usually you call it the radical left. Trump is the radical right. So that's if you're talking about moderates, for instance, Mitt Romney would be a moderate Republican. John McCain would be a moderate Republican. By comparison, I'd accept that.
And on the left, you have the same type of things. You have Bernie Sanders would be radical left, where Joe Biden would be moderate left. You know what I'm saying? So I think right now, Trump is far right. It's all his policies, everything. I've not seen him. Well, let me be careful. Trump has done some things that have been, I would say, left leaning. For instance, he was the one. He did the criminal justice reform.
Sure,
that is not a far right policy. That's a moderate policy.
And so, I don't know where you put it on the left right dynamic, but his efforts at peace and not starting more wars has been typically thought of as putting more left policy. Where it's like stop wars. Most of the people have been protesting that in the past have been more left wing, I'd say.
Yeah, I would say, but I don't know if that's because of incompetence, or is it because he is not someone. It's less. He's less of an interventionist and more of a transactional type president. If you want me to go over there and fight a war, you got to pay us something. I agree with that though. If I'm going to put blood, like when he was saying, if you want us to go over there to the Middle East and protect your oil, we got to get paid. You know what I'm saying? Why should we send all our troops, let them die, and get none of the money? I agree with that, but that's a transactional understanding of it. Where I think when you're talking about Bush and the other, they were more, let's just promote peace and tranquility around the world. Trump is like, no, that doesn't make any sense. We want this transactional peace.
I mean,
so that's what I mean.
Also, I couldn't obviously speak to what was in Trump's head, but I don't know that he necessarily thought that Kavanaugh was the most right-leaning pick he could have picked. I mean, there were other more right-leaning picks that would have been like Kesslidge, who would have been more right-leaning.
But he couldn't get through now. You can't get through. Like, he had to pick somebody right enough to get through.
Didn't Kavanaugh come on a 50-51 vote, or didn't he come on a 51-0 vote?
He got through.
Like, I think, don't you think that you think the result would have been different for Kesslidge?
Yeah, because don't forget you had two. You had what's the woman from Maine? Susan Collins. And the Democrat from West Virginia.
Right.
Now he was voting with Collins, because if Collins voted no, he votes no when Kavanaugh doesn't make it. But she voted yes, and then she took the Democratic vote because he didn't want it, because his vote wouldn't have mattered, because a 50-50 tie would have flipped it for.
Wasn't it 51-50 because the vice president broke the tie?
No, it was 51-49 because I forgot the Democrat from West Virginia.
Gorsuch? Did they break the tie on Gorsuch? I feel like
no, they broke the tie on the Secretary of Education, that Betsy DeVos. That was the first ever vice VP to break the tie. But I think when it comes to
cabinet nominee.
Yeah, for a cabinet nominee. But even for judges, for Supreme Court judges, I don't know any Supreme Court judges.
Well, no, I mean, historically, Supreme Court judges weren't that controversial.
Yeah, it was like 90.
Scalia was he unanimous or maybe -1? Ginsburg
I think
was unanimous.
Most of them was like
Ginsburg was unanimous or maybe -1. Scalia was unanimous or maybe -1. I mean, you're talking 95, 96 votes to 0 or 1. I forget exactly, but like either way. So these would be traditionally, or at least past, go back to 15 years ago, these would be the most extreme right and most extreme left judges on the Supreme Court, and they were both confirmed unanimous or close to it. And now I don't think Kavanaugh or Gorsuch or anything close to that, and they didn't get any votes like that. So now we're in a 50-50 world or something. It's very discouraging.
Well, that's because they don't trust the judges. They trust the politics. It's like now, like I think me and Viva were having this argument about now when you look up when you see a case, you look up who appointed the judge, and I think that is a problem. You know what I'm saying? Because if I can look at your ruling and agree, like for instance, the ruling about the for the women's soccer team, I never looked at who that judge was. Right? He could be right, he could be left. I don't know, but I believe that ruling was so good, so on point that it didn't matter, right? It didn't matter who appointed him. Because and you agree with that ruling, right? You said that ruling was on point.
Oh yeah, no,
did it matter who appointed that judge? But I think sometimes when you look at it through a political sphere, you want to we make excuses. That judge has to be right leaning because we disagree with what he says, or that judge has to be left.
Right.
I think
I noted Viva's comment, and I felt the same way when he was discussing the Sullivan on Bonk decision, and there was one of the concurring opinions, and the concurring opinion started with, some people will see this as nothing more than the latest salvo in the political war. And it shouldn't be read that way. And it's like, well, some of us are going to look at that way because that does seem a little bit that way.
Oh, somebody thinks I'm high in the chat. Nate is high. No, you know what? I am drinking vodka though, but I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm not high. But I do have to. It's funny because I do have to take my medication because I got to get my surgery for my eye. So I don't know if you see my eye is like totally white. It's like crazy. It's starting to pain me now.
I like Nate because he thinks differently than I do, and he acts with respect, and we treat each other with respect, and it's great. So we can have a friendship, and everything is fantastic. So we don't have to agree. He can say what he thinks, and I can say what I think, and we can have a polite discussion about it. So yay. Yeah, for dialogue.
We change each other's minds all the time.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's
like even like Viva did the video about the court ruling. He did what was the court ruling? And I was like, and he said it was the best ruling he ever heard.
I did that live stream too, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. But he was wrong on the law. He was 100% wrong on the law. The
Pennsylvania one?
Yeah.
No. What are you talking about?
He was wrong on the law, bro.
No. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the
I did an hour and a half live stream on it.
Stickland is 6 pages. You know, he was totally wrong on the law, right?
No, he's not. What are you talking about?
Yeah, he was wrong on the law. Are we talking about
the one that struck down the Pennsylvania restrictions on COVID?
Yes.
Yeah, that one. I did a live stream on it on my channel.
Number one, he
Okay.
used the wrong test. Right? He used the wrong test. He said it was. He said he was going to use intermediate scrutiny. Then he applied strict scrutiny anyway, but he failed to use the proper test that the Supreme Court has handed down early this year about COVID. That COVID is a compelling government interest and is narrowly tailored. So obviously, but he was saying that not to use strict scrutiny, right? Because COVID has been ruled strict scrutiny in the church case. COVID was ruled to be assessed under strict scrutiny. That was Roberts, 5-4.
I'd have to go back and read that decision, but I think you may be reading it more globally than it was written or intended. I'd have to go back and reread it, but I don't think that they were saying like, I mean, it can obviously be a compelling governmental interest.
All right, just to be clear, so we're both on the facts. Roberts said in the opinion, it is no doubt that COVID-19 is a compelling governmental interest, and that's why they were able to close churches. So the Supreme Court in that ruling deemed COVID-19 to be a compelling governmental interest. That's a fact. I can pull it up if you want.
I believe you.
And that's why they were able to close churches. So this judge, instead of using the strict scrutiny analysis and deeming COVID a compelling, because and for the chat, because I feel like we're saying this in the chat, doesn't understand what we're talking about. For you guys to understand, if something is deemed a compelling governmental interest, what that means is the government's power to do things is almost unlimited, right? Kobayashi, for instance, they were able to intern Japanese because they found national security to be a compelling governmental interest.
They screwed up the second part of the test. It is compelling. They just screwed up the second part of the test in Korematsu, in my opinion.
It wasn't narrowly tailored.
Yeah,
Agreed.
It wasn't narrowly tailored.
Agreed. But I think at the end of the day, you would agree if something is deemed to be a compelling government interest, then to be narrowly tailored is the fight. But you have to use the proper test, and the Supreme Court said this is a proper test. And the Supreme Court, in saying that churches can be closed, said that yes, if this is the reason why you're doing these things, it's because and Robertson talked about it being a moving target. Go ahead.
Here's where I think you might be mistaken, even if you're correct on the first half. So if you say that it's a compelling governmental interest, that satisfies the first half of the equation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're in strict scrutiny, because if you have a compelling governmental interest, then you have a substantial governmental interest, and you have a
it's a rational basis,
right? And you have a rational basis. So you have all of them, right? So you can satisfy any of the tests, but then you still need to go to the second half of that equation, which
has to be narrowly tailored.
Well, it wouldn't have to be narrowly tailored, because then I don't think that the decision comes out the way that it does in the case in the California case. I mean, I don't.
Yeah, they said because the interest of the government was compelling enough in COVID-19, the government has more authority to curtail civil liberties and to try to forward their interest in protecting the public's interest. And that's why they were able to close churches, right? Second Amendment, close churches, all that stuff, right? The government has a lot more authority. And Roberts said that this is a moving target, right? It's something that's new. So you have to give the government room and leverage to kind of work things out.
Well, that's
the same thing that happened in
that language. I mean, if you say it's a moving target, that also suggests that the answer may have changed in the interim, and that kind of goes to even what I was saying back in March, because back in March, I was saying that you're there, compelling governmental interest, no problem. You can meet strict scrutiny without breaking a sweat, as far as I was concerned back in March. But if it's a moving target, then the analysis might have changed by September, because it's September now. So in the interim, it might have even changed.
A district court judge is going to change. You're talking about a district court judge changing the analysis of the Supreme Court over a couple of months and saying that it's not a government, and because it is a moving target. Yeah. But I don't know, man. I read that ruling. I don't know, bro.
I might have to go back. I'm going to have to go back and reread the Chief Justice Roberts' opinion in that case, because I didn't even think about it, and I'm not as familiar with what you're saying. So I don't want to agree or disagree with you completely right now, because I'm like, well, maybe you're right. So I'll go back and reread it, and then I'll figure whether you're right or not.
But one other thing though, Stickman, Stickman, he actually used the dissent in that case to bolster his argument. His references to Gorsuch was from the dissent in that case.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So that alone should have. And I was going to say this to Viva. I was like, that should have sparked interest. Like, hold on, why would a case that just came down 3 months ago, and he's citing the dissent as his authority to rule this way? That's a disaster. It's ripe for appeal because Gorsuch's opinion wasn't the opinion that you can use to base any type of authority on, right? He cites Gorsuch multiple times in that opinion, doesn't he? From that case, from the case.
Yeah, sure.
So how could it be upheld? Because he's saying the dissent is right. A district court judge is saying, I'm following the dissent. What?
We learned a lot in 3 months? Question mark.
Come on.
I don't know.
I'm talking about, let's be real here. He's citing the dissent as if it was a majority opinion.
Well,
you're on the Court of Appeals. Would you overturn that decision?
You're putting me in a tight spot because I again haven't read Roberts' decision in a long time. And before
Forget about Roberts. I'm talking about his opinion, citing the dissent as authority. Would you uphold that if you were on the Court of Appeals? Honestly, could you even uphold it?
I'd have to look at the decisions to really answer that question because you're putting me in a legal spot, and I appreciate that. But I want to give you the most honest answer I can, and it's like, right now I don't know, because my gut tells me that you're overreading what Roberts wrote. Okay, so that's what my gut tells me.
That's fair.
But before I actually say that, I want to go back and reread Roberts because, like, okay, it's been a little bit, and maybe I missed something, and maybe I didn't do the proper analysis. So my gut says I don't think so, but being a good intellectual, I want to go back and double check my own work before I say, no, I disagree with my friend Nate, which I may wind up doing, but I want to go back and read it.
I agree. I think you guys can disagree with me. And I think Stickman's argument, his best argument, was the broad argument, right? This is overly broad. I think that argument wins, right? Because he's right. You can't just have unlimited authority. We can do whatever we want on that. Agreed. That's the argument that he can win on. But I think as soon as you start citing the dissent and making it seem like it was a majority opinion from a case that was passed down a couple of months ago, I think you lose.
Watching You Daily has half a point, but I have to also take half a point away. So Watching You Daily points out how many courts of appeal don't follow the precedent in Heller and use the dissent from the case in their analysis. You're correct, but I would chide the courts of appeal for doing that. Yeah. My problem is that they are doing that. So your point kind of goes the other way. It's like, yes, you're right. Courts of appeal do this all the time. They're wrong for doing it all the time. They should be following Heller. They're not doing it. They're bad courts of appeal. Courts of appeal. So whether or not this district court is being a bad district court by quoting the dissent and not going to the majority, I'd have to double check. So were they being a good? Because my first reading of it is, I did this 1.5 hour long stream, and I could have not been more fawning on it if it were a hot chick. It is brilliant. Everything about it is wonderful. I want to have your children. This is greatest thing I've ever read in my life. Blah blah blah. and now you're attacking me where I want to live. You're attacking me in my mind. You're saying, Kurt, you misread it. You misunderstood. No. You didn't read the case law properly. I'm like, damn it.
Hold on. When the case when Viva said, read this case, and then I saw your stream, and I was like, my God, this must be the greatest case ever. Everybody loves this opinion, right? Everybody who I respect loves it. But then when I read it, I started seeing, I'm like, all right, he's using the wrong test here. He's saying we're going to use the intermediate scrutiny, but then he uses the strict scrutiny test. So, all right, so there's a problem there. But I said, anyway, who's he citing as his authority for this?
At one point, he's doing rational basis review and saying it fails that too. So I mean, he's even doing rational basis review, which I thought made sense because, for example, they were saying like, why did you allow shopping at Walmart and not at McDonald's and Son, even though they both sell furniture and appliances? Like, you had no definition, you had no standard, and they're both doing the same thing. It's unequal treatment. You have no rationale. It's arbitrary. Therefore, it's not rational. Like, you can't even meet rational basis. Even if you have a compelling governmental interest, you're like a chicken with your head cut off. You have no idea what you're doing.
But the problem is, even in the rational basis analysis, I think he was wrong. I think the rational basis. Why? Wow. Because of Railway Express. right?
Uh-huh.
Do you remember Railway Express, the case that set forth rational basis? For those of you who don't know, for rational basis, the rule is even if the government doesn't give you a reason, if
Right.
the court can find any theoretical reason, it's good.
Right.
And
Any reason will be fine.
any
Unstated reason doesn't have to
even
be
if the
stated.
court
Any reason
does.
will be fine. You're
So
100% correct. And
So
therefore,
this judge makes up it says he can't find a reason, but that's not rational basis. Rational basis is, what do they call it? They literally used to call it anything goes rational basis. The only time
Just
rational
about.
basis fails is when is with the sexual orientation cases, and they used to call it rational basis with the bite. Remember rational basis? I don't know if you remember rational basis.
well, I mean, you do have to have a rational basis and any legitimate objective, and so it has to be rational reasoned. And so, I mean, you can fail rational basis review. I mean, you don't.
But
The government doesn't.
how rare is that though?
How fair is it?
How rare?
Oh, it's pretty rare. It's pretty rare to be notable, which is one of the reasons when he did it, I was like, this is a pretty big smackdown, because it is pretty rare to fail rational basis review. But it was persuasive to me. Convinced me.
No, because don't get me wrong, I read it and I was like, oh, this is actually it sounds good. But then when I started looking, I was like, yeah, if the Roberts Court didn't come down with the precedent that COVID was an obvious, compelling government interest that survived strict scrutiny, then I would say he had a point. But I don't think it survived the appeal. It might though. I could be totally wrong. I don't.
Yeah, well, I see a video in my near future. Nate the lawyer was right, or Nate the lawyer was wrong in the analysis. One of the two. But yes, I will go back and I will go reread Robert's opinion, and I'll go reread the district court's opinion. And if I wind up reversing myself, then okay, well, at least I learned something. I'm not afraid to be wrong, because I'll learn something and I'll be smarter.
Well, the only two things I'll say is when you watch this, just watch these two things. Number one, who he's citing for his authority, and number two, the test that he uses. And I think it's clear if you just look at those two things, not the rationale, but just the legal precedents and things that he uses, and it should be clear.
Okie doke, we'll go with that. Nate the lawyer over here thinks I got it hideously, horribly wrong. So
no, I don't. I think the ruling makes sense, and I think part of the ruling, like I want to be clear, Stickman was good in terms of it being overly broad. Correct, I agree with that. I just think everything else that he was doing was just out of the box. That's just my opinion, but it's an opinion, just like you're saying.
Yeah, this is where I sit. Every time you're proven wrong, you become a little less stupid. Being proven wrong is the best thing that can happen to you. It's like, yeah, I want to be the very best lawyer I can possibly be. And if I've made some sort of fundamental mistake, who am I quoting here? I think I'm quoting Jordan Peterson, actually, when he said something along these lines. It's like it was in the debate with Sam Harris. I remember the exact context where he said it. It's like, yes, I've made this mistake in this fundamental assumption. Now I can be less stupid. I'm like, that's kind of how I feel about it too. So it's like, you've challenged me on a very specific point, and it's like, okay, well, maybe I've gotten this wrong, but I will give it another go and see if I have to correct the record. So we'll find out, I guess.
Well, I don't know. I just reading it for myself, it just seemed a little bit.
Or maybe I won't change my mind, and then we'll have a dissenting opinion between you and me. It'll be Viva and me with Nate dissenting on the Court of Appeals as we review this district court's judge and see where we want to come down on this one. That'll be fun.
Look, he actually quoted Samuel Alito's dissent when the Supreme Court refused to challenge to hear the Nevada's restrictions on the gaming and gathering. And that's when Alito was like, it's good for Caesars, but the church can't meet, but Caesars can meet, and it was overturned. But he said, hey, Alito's dissent is good. I don't know. It seems like a loser to me.
Okay. I'm sorry. Fair enough. Hey, that's fine. I respect Nate, and we'll give
Mark. I like Mark. Mark says Nate sucks. I do. I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry, Mark. I just look at the legal test and see if the legal test. I agree. I think the ruling was a good ruling. I think it was written well, but I just think he messed with the legal test. I'm so sorry, Mark. I'm so sorry.
Did he cite Robert's opinion in that case?
No, he cited Alito. Robert, he cited the dissent in the opinion. He did. That's what I'm saying. If you read any opinion that cites the dissent as precedent, you're telling me you're not saying this is going to be overturned?
Well, I mean, you see cases cite dissenting opinions for various propositions. It's not like unheard of. In fact, on a given court of appeals case, the odds of seeing someone to cite a dissent is pretty good.
That person's usually in the dissent, number one. But number two, if you're talking about a Supreme Court case that came down just a couple of months ago and somebody citing the dissent as precedent, really?
Well, I think the fastest the Supreme Court has ever overturned itself, I couldn't swear to it, but it might be the Pledge of Allegiance case, because it was 4 years. Because the Supreme Court initially said, yes, you do have to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and give the Pledge of Allegiance, and then 4 years later said, no, you don't.
Wrong. The affirmative action case.
Oh, okay.
I forget the name of the case. Affirmative action, 2 years. Thurgood Marshall wrote the original opinion, and then it was overturned when O'Connor joined the court. 2 years later, it was overturned. It was an affirmative action case that was literally overturned. I forget the name of the case. And
so he says 2 years is the record. Okay, I thought it was like 4. So yeah. So I don't know about 3 months, but well, yeah, that's fine. But in a situation that's dynamic, yeah. Okay, well, fine. Let's move on to other topics where maybe I won't look like a complete idiot on my own channel. So
no. I don't think you look like a complete. Viva agrees with you. You guys disagree with me. I'm the wrong one here.
Well, maybe Viva looks like a complete idiot on his channel.
I'm saying, for all you guys in the chat, you should agree. It's really a 2. Right now, it's 2-1 on the appeals court, right? You 2 to my 1. I am the dissenting opinion. I'm just saying this is what I believe. I could be totally wrong, and I would actually confer to you guys' opinions on the matter, right? Because I trust you guys. So if you guys are saying it's good, I would say everybody in the chat should believe it's good until you do your own research, because I could be wrong, and I honestly think I may be wrong. I'm going to
there's definitely going to be a video in the very near future of Data's right or Data's wrong. One of these two things, and we're gonna have a very long discussion about here's all the ways that he does not understand what Roberts was trying to say, and what the district judge was trying to say, or Nate was completely right and I completely missed the boat, and I'm sorry, and here's my bad. So one of the two, yeah. Jason McConnell gives me $100 super chat, or 100 Canadian dollars, best dollars. 100 Canadian dollars from Jason McDonald. Thank you very much for the support, Jason. It is super appreciated as always. Okay, let's try a new topic. There was also one of the 2 topics I wanted to discuss was the other bar thing. So there was a rumor circulating around, which apparently the U.S. attorney in Oregon has denied. But there was a rumor circulating around that Barr had ordered people in the Justice Department to look for civil and or criminal charges to bring against government officials in Oregon and Washington for their contribution to or failure to stop the various riots, uprisings, blah, blah, blah. And so I thought, okay, so apparently this is not a thing that is happening, but I thought it might be interesting if we try to put on our U.S. attorney hat and try to think, is there any criminal or civil charge the U.S. government could bring against, say, the mayor of Portland?
No.
Or the governor of Washington? No, I think I was stretching pretty hard to think of one, and I was having a rough go.
Absolutely,
I was having a tough time.
It's Scalia. I would hit you with Scalia.
Yeah,
the government has no obligation to protect its citizens, and it's what's the argument? The argument was the scarce resources argument. Right?
Sure.
Scarcity.
Castle Rock versus Gonzalez.
There it is. Castle Rock versus Gonzalez. I know why I like you, because this guy's a smart guy. Castle Rock versus Gonzalez. Procedural due process.
Yeah.
But hold on. But obviously, I'm not a lawyer, so.
Yeah. The best I could come up with is, as I was stretching my brain into contortions, trying to figure out a way, is like there's a clause in the Constitution that says that the federal government shall guarantee to the states a Republican form of government.
Okay.
And so there's that clause, but to the best of my knowledge, there's no like statutes or regulations under it. So idea number 1, turn it into a self-executing provision and try to sue directly under that, a la like 6 anonymous agents, kind of thing, Bivens action kind of thing. Try to turn it into some sort of self-executing provision and sue under that. I was like, okay, let's give that a go. That seems promising.
But
and then the other thing I thought was maybe some sort of state law thing where some sort of negligence or something. But the problem is that they have, first of all, there's some immunity issues with sovereign immunity, that there's some potential issues there. Second of all, federalism issues, because the state law principally they're not enforcing, which is their prerogative to do. And so that was a real challenge. And I thought maybe for something on the federal courthouse, but then like, what would you say? Incitement? But you can't get to incitement because incitement is really, really hard. To get to incitement, it has to be basically, let's do this like right now. Because generally speaking, it's legal to encourage people to break the law. You can just say to people, it would be good for people to break a law. You can encourage people to break the law as long as you're not saying, let's do it right now. It's not incitement. So I'm struggling mightily to come up with any legal theory. I was like, can you even get them for damages to the courthouse on the basis that they had some sort of duty and failure to do so, some sort of negligence that caused harm?
Like a failure to act?
Yeah, failure to act kind of thing. Could you try to do some sort of declaratory relief on? I don't even know. So I was struggling really, really hard to rack my brain on, can I think of any basis for the federal government to sue criminally or civilly? And I basically came up with nothing. I came with zero. But that's
I don't see, because you have the police powers of the state, you have the Constitution that doesn't know that has a separate sovereigns.
Yep.
And then the problem is that the federal government can't force state governments to enforce federal law or protect federal institutions or buildings, right?
True.
So I don't see. So even if the mayor was to say, go attack the federal courthouse, you may get him for incitement, but I don't think he's saying that. But he doesn't have to put the police force out there to protect the federal buildings, right? He can just like with immigration. When I was in
it's even worse on immigration, because arguably the state can't do anything because of the exclusive federal jurisdiction.
But what happens is that like when I was a prosecutor, there would be if someone would get arrested who was I hate to even say illegal. I'm going to use the PC term. What's the PC term again?
Undocumented,
illegal, but undocumented, because
why are they undocumented?
Because they don't have their papers, man. All right.
Why would that be? It's just because they haven't gotten around to it.
So they happen to be undocumented, as the PC culture forces us to say. So they were undocumented, and what happened is that if you were convicted of a felony, ICE would come in, right? And you would be getting arraigned. And guess what? Sure. Here comes ICE to grab you up and take you back to wherever you came from, right? You're on the arraignment. So what happens is the court started saying, well, we don't have to hold the prisoner for you, right? So what they would do is do these quick arraignments, arraign them and get them out the back door real quick so ICE couldn't catch them. And when it came to a fight, it was like, well, we don't have to, we don't enforce federal law. We don't have to enforce ICE, but what the government generally does is give you they hold the purse strings out, Well, if you don't help us, then we're not going to help you. We're not going to give you that $100 million endowment or whatever that you need to survive. So that's the way it generally works. But I think in this case, and unless you can show that the state has some affirmative duty to act, then you got nothing. They got nothing. It's a lot of talk, but it just ain't nothing.
Yeah. So there might be some state law, but the problem we're trying to solve is the federal government. So we want the federal government to come in and enforce a state law, which seems like that doesn't seem like that can fly. That's not going to fly.
Because don't forget who's the final arbiter of state law. It's the state.
The state
Supreme Court. So even if the federal Supreme Court can't, they have no jurisdiction over state law.
Yeah, exactly. Even the U.S. Supreme Court can't hear the case because there's no federal question there. $5 from brain fried in Portland. Can you get the mayor, who is chief of police, has probably been part of mostly peaceful protests, asking for an undocumented citizens? See, the best thing is like maybe something under state law, but then of course the state has to enforce its own state law, which it doesn't want to do in the first place, which is the problem.
Yeah.
So no, sadly, no, I don't think there's any cause of action, unfortunately.
And as we noted earlier, the states don't have to enforce their own state law. They're not mandated to do so. Scarce resources, people. Scarce resources.
Scarce resources. Yeah, let's go with that.
But that's the law. That's what it is. I don't know.
I am very well aware that is the law. Yeah, Winnebago versus Deshawnee and Castle Rock versus Gonzalez, and also Warren versus DC. These are the trifecta of cases that tell you the government doesn't have to do anything for you.
The scarcity of resources, right? We have to pick and choose who we
sure,
help and we don't.
Yeah, let's go with that. And we have to coddle the insurrection. So that's just super wonderful, good times.
That it's hilarious, boy. But it's the law.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know what we can do there. So any subject you want to talk about, because that kind of exhausted legal subjects I want to talk about.
You know what? I did want to talk about recently. We didn't go over. Well, we did go over Rittenhouse, but I wanted to try to understand two things.
Sure.
A lot of these now police use of force cases, I'm starting to get more scared about. And the reason why is obviously the Atlanta case, right? The Atlanta case with Rayshard Brooks. That cop is being railroaded, right?
Yes.
And I think in a lot of these cases now, the police, it's even more difficult to be an officer in the sense of officers have to use force to effectuate an arrest. Sometimes it just happens, right? It just happens. But now, what would an officer do? Because right now it seems to just be black and white. What's the guy? I'm about to call him Rayshard Brooks, but he's not Rayshard Brooks. The Jacob Blake. They both have B's in their last name. The Jacob Blake phenomenon. This guy is reaching into first the new facts came out, right? That he tells the cops, "I'm going to the car for a gun." And then he goes to the car.
Has that been confirmed by someone? Has it been confirmed by the police?
I'm not even sure if that's been confirmed or not. But let's even remove that. The fact that he's going to the car under police, stop, freeze, put your hands up, and reaching into a car to pick something up. It's like, and people are protesting. They're calling him a hero. That's ridiculous. Like to me, and I hate to even say this, as a black man. It's almost disrespectful to say that he is some type of hero, because we all know anybody, white, black, yellow, green, Martian, if you're reaching into a car when the police have guns trained on you to pick something up, you're going to get shot. And the sad part about this is, I believe I would have shot him. I don't know if you would have. I think I may have shot him. If I'm telling him don't reach for it, and he reaches down there in that well, I got to do what I got to do, because I got a family I got to go to him to.
I mean, it seems like, the continuity of force, which you just did a video on, which I thought was very good, incidentally. So congratulations on that video. But it seems like the police followed all their procedures. They tried to tase him twice. They tried to physically rest him to the ground. He's coming around from the passenger rear, coming around the front to the driver's side. He apparently has a knife in his hand. It looks like a knife to me. It looks like a knife to R&R Law Group, but it has the other way for some reason.
I don't. Hold on. But before you move from that, how did he come out? Because I heard him saying that. Explain to me what is his opinion? R&R Law Group.
As best as I can determine, R&R's Law Group's opinion is that it's not a good shoot. He thinks it wasn't a good shoot. He thinks the police acted improperly.
But why though? Did he give any reason?
Oh yeah, he's done a whole documentation and a whole tables and things, and I just disagree with his analysis. I disagree with his tables. Like he'll say, okay, he says, well, there was no knife, and I'm like, the police saw it. You say they did, so that changes your analysis here. It's like, oh, the police didn't use lesser force. I'm like, yes, they did. They used a taser. That changes your analysis here. He didn't make these threatening words. Well, apparently he did. That changes your analysis here. So he makes a lot of these serious mistakes. So it was very weird.
But none of that that's not relevant to the fact if you have a serious threat can occur in an instant, right? I can put my hand in my pocket for a cop. It's suicide by a cop. Put my hand in my pocket. I got a gun. That's it. It's a serious threat. I don't need any words or anything like that. And you always look, for those of you who don't know, you always look at the moment of force, right? What was the cops doing, and what was the suspect doing? This suspect was reaching into a place. The cops are saying, don't do it. And he's reaching into a place. Do you, as an officer, for those who of you in the chat, do you want to see what he comes up with out of that vehicle? I don't want to see it. That's why I tell
Yeah,
you don't.
no, I thought the police acted very reasonably. They're giving him orders all the way, and if they thought he had a knife in his hand, I thought they acted very reasonably because you know what they say about the difference between a winner and a loser in a knife fight, right?
No, you got to tell me.
Okay, so the difference between a winner and a loser in a knife fight is the loser dies on scene and the winner dies on the ambulance to the way to the hospital. Yeah, so that's the difference between a winner and a loser in a knife fight. It's like, so knife fights are extremely dangerous. A knife at a close distance is arguably more dangerous than a gun at a close distance.
Yeah, that's we're trained. We're trained that knives under 2 feet, I believe it is. Under 20.
At a close distance, if you in a very close distance between a knife and a gun, man, I don't know the knife because you can stab, slash, you can do all kinds of things. It's really, really dangerous.
Well, and so don't forget the angles for guns for shooting a gun.
Yeah, that too. So like the police are following him around. He apparently has a knife in his hand, which is why they found it on the car, because he's reaching in, he has it on his hand, and they shoot him. He drops it on the floorboard, so that makes sense. And he apparently has a knife. Now he's like his back is to the wall, or to put it properly, his front is to the car, but you know what I mean. Yeah. And you know, he could turn around and slash, and he has nowhere to exit. And so, like, I think the police acted completely properly in that shooting. And then there was one recently where was it, Pennsylvania or something like that, where the black guy is charging out of the front door of the apartment building with a knife in hand and jumping like did you see this video?
I didn't see it, but
it just happened. Like, it was another black guy shot, and then you go to the video. You have a body cam, so the police officer, I think goes to the door. I don't quite remember that part, but he goes to the door. There's some sort of kerfuffle, and then the officer is backing up away from the door. He's backing up, and this young black guy, comes out with a knife in hand. You can clearly see it, and he's like running and jumping at the officer with this knife, and he gets shot. And that for like 24 hours was a whole thing where, like, oh, the black guy was improperly shot. I'm like, no, it seems pretty damn clear on the tape. He's charging him and leaping about like a crazy person with a knife. This doesn't seem like an improper shoot, but heaven forbid I come to that conclusion, because I don't know, I'm racist or something. Well, I don't know. Yeah, it was Lancaster, PA. I thought it was Pennsylvania. I got the right place. Excellent.
You know me. I'm a lefty. You obviously, you guys know I'm a lefty, and when I say these things about shoots, they tell me I'm a Trump supporter, I'm an evil conservative, and most of my videos, if you guys watch my videos, I don't even give my opinion, right? I just say, here are the facts, blah, 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 and let people come to their own opinions. And just from that, they say I'm a right-wing conservative. I'm like, how can I be right-wing? I'm just putting the facts here. I'm not even giving you my opinion. So it's because if you go against the narrative, you are, it just is.
But the narrative might be wrong, Nate, because they may not have analyzed it in a detailed, considered way. They may not have looked at it and analyzed it. The one in Georgia still gets to me the most.
The one in Georgia is a tragedy. That's not
the thing there. The thing there is, I have 40 minutes of video. 40 minutes of video before the incident occurred. Like, in a lot of these situations, some of it is a little bit vague because there's spotty video. Like, even in Rittenhouse, there's quite a bit of video at this point.
But Rittenhouse is self-defense, though. I don't know.
Whatever. We're moving past that. I'm just making the example. Yeah. So we've got spotty video. Like, even in the one that we just saw in Pennsylvania, it's a little bit spotty because what happened up to the point of the guy leaping about. It's like we can make some hypotheses of some stuff that could have gone whatever. But the one in Pennsylvania and the one in the Atlanta in the Wendy's parking lot, I have 40 minutes of uninterrupted video showing me exactly what happened at every possible step of the way. And I'm like, for you to come to any other conclusion at this point is insane. There's no fog of war. It's not even a moot arbory where, because I only have the last couple of seconds of that, and I thought that was pretty clear. And maybe something happened outside that for some reason. I mean, but the one in Georgia is the one that gets to me the most, because I have 40 minutes of uninterrupted video showing me exactly what happened. And I'm like, the officers could not have been more professional at every step along the way. And it drives me a little bit insane. That's the one that drives me the most insane, I think, of them all.
Use of force continuum. If somebody has a taser, you pull out your gun. You saw the video, right? That's what they train us to do. If someone has a taser, I pull out my gun. And that's what that officer did. The guy pointed a taser at him. He shot him. I don't see how that's a misuse of force. But again, it's a tragedy because everybody's seeing this as black and white, but nobody's just seeing this as two. If you just take out black and white, I think everybody would agree that was a good shot.
I'd like to think that I'm approaching this in a relatively colorblind way, as best as I can. And I'd like to think I'm looking at this.
We're coming to the same conclusions.
Yeah, I'd like to think I'm looking at this a relatively colorblind way and just trying to apply the facts and the law as best as I can and coming to these conclusions. And presumably, if I were a horrible racist, I'd be against Ahmaud Arbery because he's minority. And I'm like, no, he was in the right and these other guys are in the wrong. But I don't know. It's the whole thing is and it's just the whole thing is messed up as hell. I don't know. It's annoying.
Well, somebody just said, did he just say Rittenhouse was not self-defense? No,
I did not say that.
I did not say that.
I didn't say that either.
No, please don't put words in our mouth.
No, I definitely did not say that.
Rittenhouse was
self-defense. Yes, Rittenhouse is self-defense. Yes. I definitely did not say that.
No.
What I said, to just be a little bit clearer about this, I said that I don't have that continuous unbroken video, like I did in that Wendy's shooting where I have 40 minutes leading up to the incident. I have it completely on tape. There's no ambiguity about who did what, where, when, right? Mm-hmm. So in Rittenhouse, I don't quite have that. I have some videos. I have some things where the guy said, shoot me. I have them chasing the parking lot. I have definitely clips that lead me to the conclusion of self-defense. I don't quite have the unbroken segment. So my point is there could be out of the ether, there could be some facts that are not yet apparent for some reason that somehow would change the Rittenhouse analysis because there are gaps. I don't have a perfect record. But in the Atlanta shooting, I've got 40 minutes of unbroken tape. I have a perfect record. I have a perfect unbroken record. There's like no ambiguity. There's no space for me to say, well, maybe something happened in this space that could somehow change the analysis. And maybe I should factor in the possibility that there's some element here that, we're not seeing yet. The one that went, so I think Rittenhouse is definitely self-defense. It's just slightly more ambiguous than the one in the Wendy's parking lot, which is so unambiguous.
Yeah.
Because I have this 40 minutes of tape. I can't freaking believe it. How could you come to any other conclusion and they burn the Wendy's down? Because I don't know reasons.
No, it's because it's they want to see it. Number one, I don't know why that cop was fired. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. It's insane. I think it's just a pendulum swing too far the other side. That's what it is. I think after George Floyd, they said any cop that shoots a black man is wrong. And no matter if he's black or white or whatever, because don't forget, this wasn't a phenomenon with only white cops. Remember the 7 black cops that earlier that had got fired and prosecuted. It's just something that they were doing.
You saw that video with the 2 cops who were sitting in their car and just got shot.
Yes,
up there. I mean, it's like come on.
And then the sick part about that is the people who went to the hospital and protesting to them that they should die. It's like someone like me. I say I'm a lefty, right? But I'm not. You guys know I'm really a moderate. I'm as moderate as it gets, right? I'm pro-gun, but I'm also, pro-abortion, right? It's like I'm as middle as the road as it gets. There is no way. I walked on. When I patrolled some of the worst streets in Harlem, right? And the 99.9% of the cops that I worked with were good, honest people who just wanted to go home at night. You go out there, you do a job, and go home at night. And I've seen cops run into some horrible situations. Matter of fact, I was involved personally in an active shooter situation, right? Where there was somebody who came with a gun intending to kill officers, right? The person that intended to kill us as officers. We're in uniform. And the reason why we know that is because in the person's manifesto, well, let me break it down what happened. I remember I was the stats guy, so I did all our criminal statistics, right? And what we do is that when people get arrested and we get calls for service, we do statistics to see how to deploy our resources. Someone came into the school, and what they did was the person wanted to kill their girlfriend, And then after they killed their girlfriend, they wanted to kill as many people as possible. And so they had a fantasy played out. And that's what happens in most of these mass shooters scenarios. The person who's insane, they have a fantasy they want to play out. So this person wanted to play out their fantasy. So they wanted to kill their girlfriend in the middle of what they call our rotunda. Kill that person, and then started killing. And that person said, I wanted to kill cops. So I hope the cops comes because I'll start shooting at them. But the school was so bad at, I think, their human resources, where the girl was just stuck in human resources, right? So she got called up to go to the counter because they had numbers. And when she got called to go to the counter, the guy pulled the gun. He was like, yo, you can't go anywhere. But she was already going. So she went up to the counter. She says, she tells the person at the counter, hey, the guy has a gun. The guy has a gun. And the guy says, stay here. And she calls the cops. So I wasn't in NYPD, but so we go. And it's funny because my chief would just happen to be in the area. So he goes. Next thing we know, it's a hostage situation. He pulls out the gun, has them pinned, right? Because they're now shocked because they didn't believe he had a gun. He puts the gun on him. Everybody hauls ass. They draw on the guy and it's drop it. He drops the gun. Everybody's safe. So then we get to his manifesto. His manifesto had a detailed analysis of how he was going to go through all of the buildings and kill people. So we dodged a bullet. And the only reason why he didn't do that is because his fantasy was broken, because he wasn't able to do it where he wanted to do it, save lives. And I was a part of that situation. And the fact of the matter is that day, knowing that there's a guy in there with a gun who wants to kill people, I saw cops run into that situation. People are running out, and they ran in there to protect lives. Bulletproof vests and guns only. Mm-hmm. Now, they are doing that for a paycheck. They're doing that because they took a job. They didn't have to do. They could have stood outside and just waited. They ran into the line of fire. And I think people forget sometimes. That's what they're out there for. And yes, cops make mistakes because they're people too. But at the end of the day, when you need help, you're calling 911. You're not calling BLM. You're not calling Antifa. You're calling 911. And the people who come are coming to help you. Right. That's what we have to understand. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I know I'm on my soapbox, so I'm sorry.
No, I mean you have every right to be, Nate, and you have every right to be frustrated and upset. And as you were telling me that story, for some reason my mind went back to 9/11, and maybe because we recently just had the 19th anniversary of it. And maybe that's why my mind went there. But I was just thinking about how we all came together and we were so pro police, pro fire. And I was thinking to myself, as you were telling all that, it's like, what happened? What happened in 19 years when, the police were walking on water to, they can do no wrong to they can do no right. What is that turnabout in our culture inside a generation about? So that was what I was thinking about for some reason. And, I guess it's if it bleeds, it leads. There probably are, there's some percentage of cops who are bad actors, but there's some percentage of anything who are bad actors, and the ones that are bad actors get all the press. The cops do. I forget the stats, or I could quote them off the top of my head, but you might know them better. How many interactions are there between police and civilians in a year? I don't know.
It's got to be crazy. It's got to be something crazy.
I was trying to remember, because some police union was giving a press conference relatively recently and was quoting a number, and I want to say it was hundreds of thousands, or maybe it was like 1.3 million. I can't quite remember the number, but in any case, like the number of interactions that we're talking about are hundreds of thousands of interactions between police and civilians, and the number of times that police shoot at all is
unbelievably low. Yeah.
The number of times they shoot falsely is wrong. The number of times that they are like just completely off the reservation and even malicious is relatively rare. So I'm not, the reaction to it is a bit disproportionate. It seems like there are some people who want to dissolve the state for whatever purposes, and they are using this as an excuse to do whatever else they want to do.
But I'll tell you this, because I did the statistics for the crime stats for where we were at. And from what I understood, there was kind of a feedback loop that tied into this institutional racism that a lot of people say are within the police department. But I think it's part it's part of a vestige of the past, but it's also part of the new way of doing policing. Because for those of you who don't know, the way policing is done now is based on statistics, right? Calls for service. If a lot of people call and say that there are, bad things happening in the area, you send your resources to that area to try to quell that. And then what happens is that at the end of the month, you have your sergeants or your supervisors come in and you say, well, what did you do? Because you had a spike in crime. What did you do to stop that spike in crime? But what happens is that in New York, you have good neighborhoods and you have bad neighborhoods. So the bad neighborhoods, you'll say a cop needs to have 3 arrests a month, right? Because the statistics show that each cop in that area should have about three arrests a month. But in a good neighborhood, you would say, well, you maybe have 1 arrest every 3 months. So what it does, it sets up this dynamic to, if you're a cop in that bad neighborhood, you got to get your 3 arrests, or guess what? You're on a bad schedule. You're the bad guy on, there's a lot of negative pieces, like your evaluation is bad if you don't get your 3 arrests. So places where you don't have, so for that person who's smoking weed, you're going to give him a summons, you're going to arrest him because you need your 3, right? You need your 3. But in a good neighborhood, getting 3 arrests is a bad thing, right? Because now you've just raised your quota, right? If your quota is 1 every 3 months, if I get 3 this month, the next month they're going to say, well, you need 2. So you want to keep those quotas low. So you'll get your 1, but then everything else you're trying to let go. You're trying to mediate because you don't want to raise that standard of saying, now I got 5 arrests, and next month they'll say you need 3 arrests. So that's kind of what happens, why the numbers are so skewed, I think, in places like New York, because of these statistical driven analysis. But they have, and it has to be some way where they can change it so you don't have officers who now have to get your 3 arrests in that area. Maybe they can have some more discretion, where in the good neighborhoods unfortunately happen to be majority white, and the bad neighborhoods happen to be majority minority, and these quotas have this proportion where it disproportionately affects these communities. There's a better way. I don't know what that better way is, but there has to be a better way.
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense to deploy police. I mean, at least superficially, it would make sense. Well, maybe there's another way to do it, but at least superficially, it makes sense to deploy police to places where there's more crime. If for another reason, then one would hope that the presence alone might deter the crime because there's more police there. Whether or not that should be tied to arrest seems a little bit dubious. But trying to deploy people where they're needed, presumably we build fire stations near areas that are particularly susceptible to high fire risk, and based on populations and other things. So it's like, okay, well, all right, that seems logical, but to put it into a quota system seems problematic. Then how you make sure officers are actually doing their job is the only reason.
That's why you have the quotas.
That's why you have the quota, to make sure they're actually doing their job. But there's got to be some better way to accomplish that. I don't know, but there's real problems there. I don't know. To go back to an earlier point of yours, I don't know the degree to which BLM will make it into the history books in some sort of sense of being the new civil rights movement. I don't know how deep this movement will go, or how long, or maybe it's somewhat dependent on who wins the election. I have a feeling that if Biden wins the election, a lot of this will go away.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and if Trump wins the election, a lot of it won't. But it does seem to me that the Democrat, it seems odd to me, because the Democrat cities, as Trump himself pointed out, if you go like top 50 cities, something like 2 or 3 of them are run by Republicans or independent. And most cities are Democratic holds, and the ones that are having all these problems are Democrat, and they can't get their own ship together. So you want to give the Democrats the reins of power, even though they can't get their own ship in order. It's like, okay, well, that seems to be a problem.
No, but that sort of cuts both ways, though, because if you talk about the poor states, they happen to be Republican states, right? The states that give the most money to the federal government, the richest states, happen to be Democratic states. So I don't know. I think when we start thinking about ourselves as Democratic states versus Republican states, we should start thinking of ourselves as problem solvers, right? And when it comes to taxes, how can states like Texas and Florida do it so well and have such little taxes, and states like New York has such high taxes and do it poorly?
That's an astoundingly good question. What is Texas doing that New York isn't doing? Because we don't have income tax here, thank God for that. Yeah. And the Texas seems to be run relatively well, all things considered, and it's a nice place to be.
But if you talk about But if we talk about states that give money to the federal government, New York and California is 1 and 2, but a state like Mississippi and Alabama are the lowest. They get the most money. So, for every $2 New York sends,
right,
those $2 go to Mississippi. So
New York is apologize. Texas is positive. I know it's like $1.27 or something like that per every dollar.
But the highest is New York, California.
Yeah.
They give the most money to the federal government. So all these other states who are the negatives are living off New York. That's Alabama. That's Louisiana. That's not Texas. Alabama, Louisiana. All those ruby red states. They're living off of New York and California dollars. So that's what I'm talking about. We are the United States. We're not just some sovereigns that point to say these people are bad. We can solve these problems together. But as long as we keep looking at ourselves as blue and red states, then we're always going to be apart.
Well, I do appreciate the unity argument, so I appreciate that. But these political times, I guess it's just like
it is.
It's interesting because the degree to which things are being blamed on either side is really interesting, especially to me because someone who is more on the right. It seems to me, like the protests, especially the violent ones, are being led, it seems, by people on the self-declared left. So I'm not sure how the right is getting blamed for this, but okay, apparently we're getting blamed for it somehow.
I think it's the media. The media is just
the media sucks. Yeah, the media does suck. The media is garbage, and they're promoting it for their own selfish interests, and it sucks.
Well, listen, brother, we are hour 10 minutes in, and I have to get up super early tomorrow. Unfortunately, we're about to go on vacation. I don't know how we're going to do this in COVID, but it's just
where are you going?
I'm thinking we're going to go to Vegas. But we're supposed to be leaving on, what day is it? Hold on. I'm looking right now.
Is anything happening in Vegas these days?
It's open. It's one of the few places open. So
is it?
Yeah.
Okay then.
Yeah. So we got cheap flights, and we're gonna be happy. So that's where we're headed to. So hopefully it will work out. But we'll see. And the kids want to see the Grand Canyon and all that stuff. So I'll send pictures. So.
Well, I look forward to that.
Oh, yeah, I have a video of Viva in the morning. Somebody said, don't you have a video? Yeah, but that's 10 a.m. So, and then my morning, for you guys don't know, I go take the kids to school, and it's just so much I got to do. So,
yeah, well, we all have a lot to do. So I will thank my friend Nate for our bi-weekly stream, as always. It's always a pleasure to have him. And I'll say it again, that I really appreciate the challenge on some of the stuff because, I want to get smarter. So I'll definitely do my own legal research and try to figure out which of us made some grave mistakes along the way. And if it's me, well, there you go.
Well, tell me if I'm wrong. I'm here to accept. I'll be here. We'll be doing this next week, and I'll be saying, hey, I was grossly wrong. I was wrong. I think I'm right, though. On Stickman, I think I'm right on Stickman, though.
All right. I'm going to sign off for now, everyone. Peace.